Ambassador Lisa Carter walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers with steady steps. The room was huge beyond anything she had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds seemed to form near the top. Hundreds of different alien species filled the curved rows of seats that surrounded the central speaking platform, where she now stood. Lisa had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. She carried with her the hopes of 8 billion humans who waited back on Earth for news of their acceptance into the galactic community. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat style, and her dark blue diplomatic uniform bore the symbols of United Earth. Behind her stood Captain Jake Morrison and 2 other human representatives. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair, who served as her military advisor. He wore the gray uniform of Earth's Space Defense Force, and his sharp eyes constantly scanned the alien audience. The chamber buzzed with strange sounds as different species communicated in their native languages. Some aliens looked almost human, but with different colored skin or extra arms. Others were completely unlike anything from Earth. The Zephyrians sat in one section and looked like living crystals that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Their leader, Chancellor Vextar, was the tallest among them, and his crystal body pulsed with blue light when he spoke. In another section sat the Corvan Empire delegation. They looked like giant insects with hard shells and sharp claws. General Thakamor led their group, and his black carapace was covered with scars from old battles. His compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like dark mirrors, and when he clicked his mandibles together it sounded like breaking glass. The strangest group was the Ethereal Collective. They appeared as floating clouds of colored energy that shifted and changed shape constantly. Their representative had no fixed form, but spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Lisa stepped forward to the speaking platform. A device attached to her collar would translate her words into hundreds of alien languages so everyone could understand. She began her presentation with confidence despite the intimidating audience. She told them about humanity's journey from a divided world to a united planet. She showed images of Earth's cities, its oceans and forests, and its people working together. She explained how humans had learned to solve their differences through talking instead of fighting. She spoke about human art, music, and literature. She shared discoveries in science and medicine that could benefit all galactic civilizations. Lisa offered trade agreements that would bring human resources and knowledge to alien worlds. She proposed cultural exchange programs where humans and aliens could learn from each other. Most importantly, she requested that Earth be granted membership in the Galactic Council, so humanity could participate in keeping peace throughout the galaxy. As she spoke, Lisa noticed the reactions of her audience. Some aliens seemed interested and leaned forward in their seats. Others whispered among themselves or made gestures that her briefings had warned her might indicate disagreement or dismissal. The 3 major powers showed the most concerning reactions. Chancellor Vexitar's crystal body flashed with colors that Jake had told her meant contempt. The Zephyrians considered themselves the smartest species in the galaxy and looked down on younger civilizations. During her presentation about human scientific achievements, Vextar made a sound like breaking crystal that served as their version of laughter. General Thakamor was even less subtle in his disdain. The Corvan had intercepted old Earth broadcasts, showing human wars and conflicts from decades past. They had analyzed human military equipment and tactics from these outdated sources. Thakamor's clicking mandibles and the way his compound eyes never focused on Lisa showed he considered humans weak and unworthy of respect. The Ethereal Collective representative pulsed with colors that indicated what Jake called polite condescension. These ancient energy beings claimed to have evolved beyond physical forms and viewed all biological species as primitive. They had supposedly achieved perfect peace in their realm and considered any species with a history of conflict to be morally inferior. When Lisa finished her presentation, the chamber fell silent for several long moments. Then Chancellor Vexitar rose from his crystal throne. His voice rang through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. He spoke of humanity as primitive, mammals who had barely learned to leave their homeworld. He dismissed their technological achievements as crude copies of things other species had mastered millennia ago. He laughed at the idea of humans contributing anything meaningful to galactic civilization. His words cut through the chamber, and Lisa felt her cheeks burn with controlled anger. General Thackmore clicked his way to his feet, and his harsh voice grated against the chamber walls. He spoke of reviewing human military capabilities and finding them pathetic. He described human weapons as toys and human tactics as the desperate flailing of a species that had spent too long fighting itself. He suggested that humans should focus on learning from their betters rather than presuming to offer anything of value. The ethereal representative's response was the most insulting, because it came wrapped in false kindness. The energy being spoke of humanity's violent nature as an unfortunate stage in evolution that most species eventually outgrew. It suggested that humans were simply not ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship and should spend several more centuries learning to control their aggressive impulses. Other alien delegates joined in with similar comments. Some were openly mocking, while others offered what sounded like helpful advice, but carried clear messages that humans were not welcome as equals. The few species that had seemed interested in Lisa's presentation remained silent, unwilling to speak, against the major powers. After 3 hours of debate that felt more like a public humiliation, the Council reached its decision. Humanity would be granted probationary observer status. This meant Earth could send representatives to watch Council meetings, but could not vote on any decisions. Human ships could travel through established space lanes, but only with proper escorts. Trade would be limited to basic resources, and only with species willing to deal with such a young civilization. Lisa accepted the decision with grace and thanked the Council for their consideration. Inside, she burned with frustration and disappointment. She had hoped for so much more. As the session ended and delegates began to leave, she gathered her papers and prepared to return to her ship. Jake moved close to her side as they walked through the emptying chamber. While maintaining his professional appearance, he had spent the entire session doing much more than just watching. His eyes had memorized the layout of security stations, the positions of alien military personnel, and the locations of critical systems. His enhanced memory implants had recorded every word spoken and every reaction shown. As they reached the chamber doors, Lisa paused and looked back at the massive room where humanity's hopes had been crushed. She made a mental note of every face that had mocked her people and every voice that had dismissed human worth. Jake noticed her expression and nodded slightly. He understood that this was not the end of the story, but merely the beginning of a much larger tale. 6 months had passed since the humiliating session in the Galactic Council chambers, but Lisa Carter refused to give up on diplomacy. She had established a small human embassy on Nexus Prime Station and worked every day to build relationships with individual alien species. The embassy was just 3 rooms in a forgotten section of the massive station, but Lisa made it feel like home with earth plants and human art on the walls. Jake Morrison had been promoted to major and now led a small security detail of 12 human personnel. They wore the standard gray uniforms of Earth's Diplomatic Protection Service, but Jake knew each of them was actually a highly trained intelligence operative. While they appeared to be simple guards, they spent their time mapping every corridor of the station, analyzing alien technology and documenting military capabilities. Lisa's diplomatic efforts had produced some small successes. The Altarian Federation, a group of peaceful trader species, had agreed to limited exchanges of goods. Human coffee and chocolate had become popular items in several alien markets. A few minor civilizations had expressed interest in human medical knowledge, particularly Earth's advances in treating radiation poisoning. However, the 3 major powers continued to treat humanity with open contempt. The Zephyrians ignored all communication attempts. The Corvan Empire responded to trade requests with insulting offers that would have made Earth a virtual slave colony. The Ethereal Collective sent polite messages that essentially told humans to go away and grow up. The situation took a dark turn when human merchant vessels began disappearing in supposedly safe sectors of space. The first ship to vanish was the cargo hauler New Boston, with a crew of 15. It had been carrying medical supplies to the Altarian homeworld when it simply stopped responding to communications. Search teams found only debris and energy signatures that matched Corvin weapons. When Lisa brought evidence of the attack to the Council's Security Committee, she was told these incidents were isolated problems that happened to many species. Committee Chairman Zeltron, a six-armed creature from the Hegemony Coalition, barely looked at her data before dismissing her concerns. He suggested that humans were simply inexperienced in space travel and probably suffering equipment failures rather than attacks. 2 weeks later, the merchant ship Prairie Wind disappeared near the Corvin border. This time, Jake's people had secretly installed advanced recording devices on the ship. The final transmission showed Corvin raiders boarding the vessel and executing the entire crew. The captain, Ben Walker from Texas, tried to surrender but was killed while broadcasting a distress signal that human intelligence intercepted. Lisa returned to the Security Committee with clear video evidence of Corvin piracy. The footage showed General Thakmore's personal raiders murdering unarmed human civilians. Chairman Zeltron watched the recording with his multiple eyes, but then filed it away as inconclusive evidence. He claimed the video could have been faked and that humans were probably staging these attacks to gain sympathy. More ships disappeared over the following months. The cargo vessel, Midwest Star, vanished with 32 crew members. The research ship Discovery was found floating empty with signs of a boarding action. Each time Lisa presented evidence to the Council, she was met with the same dismissive responses. Alien bureaucrats spoke to her as if she were a child who did not understand how the galaxy worked. The breaking point came during a formal dinner, hosted by the Zephyrian ambassador, at his crystalline palace on Nexus Prime. The event was meant to celebrate successful negotiations between the Zephyrians and the Hegemony Coalition. Every major diplomatic figure in the sector had been invited, including Lisa as Earth's representative. Lisa had spent weeks preparing for this opportunity. She hoped to use the social setting to build personal relationships with key alien leaders. She brought detailed proposals for mining rights agreements that would provide Earth with rare minerals needed for expanding their space fleet. The deals were carefully structured to benefit both sides and showed extensive research into Zephyrian economic needs. The dinner was held in a vast crystal hall that refracted light into impossible patterns. Alien diplomats from dozens of species mingled while servers offered foods from across the galaxy. Lisa wore her best formal diplomatic attire and carried her proposals in a presentation case made from polished earthwood. When the time came for formal presentations, Lisa stepped forward to address the gathering. She spoke about the mutual benefits of human-Zephyrian cooperation and outlined her carefully researched mining proposals. The agreements would give Zephyrians access to human agricultural products and medical knowledge in exchange for mineral extraction rights in uninhabited systems. As she spoke, she noticed the reactions of her audience. Some aliens seemed politely interested, but the major power representatives showed open amusement. Chancellor Vextar's crystal body flashed with colors that Jake had taught her meant mockery and contempt. General Thakmore's mandibles clicked in what passed for Corvin laughter. When Lisa finished her presentation, the reaction was swift and brutal. Chancellor Vextar rose from his crystal throne and spoke in a voice that carried clearly through the hall. He thanked Lisa for the entertainment and suggested that her proposals were amusing attempts by a primitive species to play at real diplomacy. The Zephyrian leader then did something that shocked even the other aliens present. He literally laughed at Lisa's carefully prepared agreements, describing them as the desperate offerings of a species that had nothing of value to contribute. He suggested that humans might be better suited to serving refreshments at diplomatic functions rather than attempting to participate in serious negotiations. Other alien diplomats joined in the mockery. General Thakmore clicked his approval and added that perhaps humans could serve as manual laborers in Corvin mining operations. The ethereal representative pulsed with colors that indicated polite agreement with these humiliating suggestions. Lisa stood in the center of the crystal hall as waves of alien laughter washed over her. Her face burned with shame and anger, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. She thanked the Chancellor for his consideration and quietly gathered her rejected proposals. Jake and the other humans present watched with carefully controlled expressions, memorizing every face that had participated in the public humiliation. As the evening continued, Lisa was essentially ignored by the other diplomats. When she attempted to join conversations, aliens would politely excuse themselves or switch to languages their translators could not handle. She spent the rest of the dinner standing alone near a crystal window, looking out at the stars and thinking about the message she would have to send back to Earth. Jake approached her near the end of the evening with a drink and a quiet update on his observations. While Lisa had been enduring diplomatic humiliation, his security team had been busy. They had used the gathering to photograph key alien military personnel, identify security protocols, and map the palace's defensive systems. Every moment of mockery had been recorded for analysis back on Earth. The ride back to the human embassy was conducted in silence. Lisa stared out the transport window at the alien city passing below while Jake compiled his intelligence reports. Both of them knew that something fundamental had changed during the dinner. The aliens had made it clear that they would never accept humans as equals through peaceful means. That night, Lisa sat in her small office surrounded by earth plants and human artwork, composing her final diplomatic communique to the home government. She wrote about the systematic dismissal of human concerns, the ongoing attacks on human ships, and the complete failure of diplomatic solutions. She described the evening's public humiliation and the clear message that aliens viewed human restraint as weakness and human courtesy as subservience. Jake stood guard outside her office while his team transmitted their intelligence data through encrypted channels back to Earth Strategic Command. The information included detailed assessments of alien military capabilities, technological weaknesses, and cultural blind spots that could be exploited. What the aliens had mistaken for primitive human curiosity was actually sophisticated intelligence gathering by experienced military professionals. As Lisa sealed her report and prepared it for transmission, she looked one last time at her proposals for peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit. Then she filed them away and began drafting recommendations for a very different kind of human response to alien arrogance and aggression. Admiral Susan Blake stood in the center of Earth Strategic Command headquarters, reading Lisa Carter's final diplomatic report with growing anger. The massive underground facility buried beneath the Colorado mountains hummed with activity as thousands of personnel worked around the clock to coordinate humanity's defense forces. The main operations center featured a holographic display of known space that showed the positions of every human ship and installation. Blake was a stern woman in her 50s with gray hair and the kind of steady gaze that came from 30 years of military service. She had commanded Earth's first deep space exploration missions and later led the development of humanity's growing fleet. Around her stood the other members of Earth's military leadership, each studying Jake Morrison's detailed intelligence, reports about alien capabilities and weaknesses. General Frank Rodriguez commanded Earth's ground forces and had spent months analyzing alien combat footage from their various conflicts. He was a compact man with dark skin and the quick movements of someone who had started as a frontline soldier. His assessment of Corvan ground tactics was particularly interesting because it revealed they relied heavily on individual warrior prowess rather than coordinated unit actions. Admiral Chen Wei led the Space Navy, and his background in engineering made him fascinated by the technical aspects of Jake's reports. The aliens had superior individual technologies, but their systems were rigid and specialized. Human technology was less advanced but far more adaptable and capable of rapid modification during combat operations. Colonel Amy Thompson commanded Special Operations and had been studying the intelligence data on alien security systems and defensive protocols. Her teams had developed new infiltration techniques specifically designed to exploit the psychological weaknesses that Jake had identified in different alien species. The centerpiece of their discussion was Dr. Richard Stone, head of military, research and development. Stone was a thin man with wild hair who spoke rapidly and gestured constantly while explaining his latest projects. What he revealed to the assembled leadership would have shocked the aliens who had dismissed human technology as primitive copies of their own innovations. Stone explained that humanity had spent the past year in a massive technological development program. The alien broadcasts they had intercepted showing human conflicts were decades out of date and gave a completely false impression of current human capabilities. While aliens had perfected individual technologies over thousands of years, humans had developed systems that could evolve and improve in real time. The most significant breakthrough was in propulsion technology. Human ships now used quantum manipulation drives that were not only faster than anything in alien space, but also produced no detectable energy signatures when operating in stealth mode. This meant human fleets could move through space completely, invisible to alien sensors, and appear anywhere without warning. Human weapons systems had undergone similar revolutionary improvements. Traditional alien warfare relied on energy shields and armor that could deflect or absorb specific types of attacks. Human adaptive weapons analyzed enemy defenses in milliseconds and automatically reconfigured themselves to penetrate whatever protection they encountered. No alien shield could adapt fast enough to stop weapons that changed their properties faster than defensive systems could respond. Communications represented another area where human technology had leaped ahead of alien capabilities. Earth's quantum entanglement network allowed instant communication across any distance without using detectable transmissions. Human commanders could coordinate complex operations in real time, while alien forces remained dependent on traditional, faster-than-light signals that could be intercepted or jammed. Perhaps most importantly, human military doctrine had evolved to emphasize speed, unpredictability, and overwhelming concentration of force at decisive points. While aliens fought according to rigid honor codes and traditional battle formations, humans had developed tactics based on deception, psychological warfare, and exploiting enemy weaknesses rather than matching their strengths. Blake authorized the implementation of Operation Silent Thunder after reviewing all the intelligence and capability assessments. The operation had 3 distinct phases designed to demonstrate human military capabilities without causing unnecessary destruction. The goal was not conquest, but rather establishing the kind of respect that would make future diplomatic negotiations more productive. Phase 1 involved comprehensive intelligence gathering about alien military assets, command structures, and defensive installations. Jake's reports provided the foundation, but additional reconnaissance was needed to identify specific targets and develop detailed operational plans for each alien species. Phase 2 required positioning human forces throughout alien space without being detected. Stealth ships would move through dark space regions using unconventional routes that avoided traditional shipping lanes and sensor networks. Special operations teams would infiltrate key installations to gather additional intelligence and position assets for potential strikes. Phase 3 was the actual demonstration of human capabilities through carefully targeted operations against military assets belonging to species that had attacked human ships or participated in diplomatic humiliation. The strikes would be swift, precise, and designed to minimize casualties while maximizing psychological impact. Blake selected her operational commanders with careful consideration of their specific skills and experience. Each would lead operations against different alien species using tactics specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses that Jake had identified in their military thinking and cultural assumptions. Commander Sarah Wells received command of operations against Corvin military installations. Her background in rapid assault tactics made her perfect for dealing with an enemy that prized individual combat prowess over coordinated defense. The Corvin expected face-to-face battles with clear rules of engagement and would be completely unprepared for human hit-and-run tactics. Commander Alex Turner would lead strikes against Zephyrian communication networks and research facilities. His expertise in electronic warfare and system infiltration was exactly what was needed to deal with an enemy that relied heavily on their advanced technology and assumed their crystal-based systems were impossible for primitives to understand or attack. Captain Maria Santos commanded the science vessel Darwin and would handle operations against the Ethereal Collective. Her background in theoretical physics and energy manipulation made her the only human officer qualified to engage beings made of pure energy. Her ship carried experimental quantum disruptors that could theoretically interfere with the energy matrices that formed ethereal bodies. While the operational commanders prepared their forces, Jake Morrison returned to Nexus Prime Station with a new diplomatic team. Officially, they were there to continue negotiations and maintain Earth's embassy. In reality, Jake's people were gathering final intelligence updates and positioning covert operatives throughout the station's critical systems. The aliens welcomed the return of human diplomats with the same condescending attitude they had always shown. Chancellor Vextar made jokes about humans being persistent despite their obvious limitations. General Thakmor suggested that perhaps this time the humans would make more realistic offers that recognized their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. Neither alien leader suspected that the humble human embassy staff included some of Earth's most experienced intelligence operatives and special forces personnel. While alien security focused on preventing external threats, they paid little attention to the supposedly harmless humans who had been living on their station for months. Jake's team used their diplomatic status to access areas of the station that would normally be restricted to alien personnel only. They mapped critical infrastructure, identified security weaknesses, and positioned monitoring devices that would allow Earth forces to track alien military movements in real time. Meanwhile, human fleets began moving through dark space toward their assigned operational areas. The ships traveled in small groups using different routes and timing to avoid creating detectable patterns. Advanced stealth technology kept them invisible to alien sensors, while quantum communication networks allowed perfect coordination without revealing their positions. Dr. Stone's research teams worked around the clock to complete final preparations for the operation. New weapon systems were installed on human ships and tested against simulated alien defenses. Special equipment designed specifically for each target species was manufactured and distributed to operational commanders. The most critical element was timing. All operations would begin simultaneously across multiple star systems to prevent aliens from warning each other or coordinating responses. Human forces would have only a brief window to complete their objectives before alien reinforcements could arrive. As the final preparations concluded, Admiral Blake stood once again in the Strategic Command Center, watching as the holographic display showed human forces moving into position throughout alien space. In a few hours, the galaxy would discover what happened when a species that had survived on a world where everything evolved to kill everything else finally decided that diplomatic solutions had been exhausted. The human response began not with declarations of war or formal challenges, but with silence that spread across the galaxy like a growing shadow. Corvin raider bases that had been active for decades simply stopped transmitting their regular status reports. Zephyrian research stations conducting advanced crystalline experiments went dark without warning. Ethereal meditation ships that had floated peacefully in deep space for centuries vanished from all sensor grids as if they had never existed. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Wells stood on the bridge of the stealth destroyer Nightfall as it approached, the primary Corvin military depot in the Epsilon sector. The facility was built into a massive asteroid and served as the staging ground for raids against human shipping. General Thakmor had personally ordered attacks on 17 human vessels from this base, resulting in the deaths of over 200 innocent civilians. Sarah was a compact woman with short red hair and the quick reflexes that came from years of combat training. Her ship carried 60 of Earth's best special operations Marines, each equipped with adaptive armor and weapons designed specifically to counter Corvin biology and tactics. The Corvin had thick carapaces that could deflect most energy weapons, but human kinetic penetrators could punch through their natural armor with ease. The Nightfall approached the asteroid base using advanced stealth technology that made it invisible to Corvin sensors. The base's defensive systems were designed to detect and engage traditional alien warships, not human vessels that operated on completely different technological principles. Sarah's ship slipped through the outer perimeter defenses like smoke through a screen. Jake Morrison's intelligence reports had provided detailed information about Corvin military psychology and tactical preferences. The insectoid warriors prized individual combat skill and preferred direct confrontations where they could demonstrate their physical superiority. Their base security relied on powerful automated defenses at the perimeter and elite guards at critical locations, but they had no protocols for dealing with infiltrators who could appear anywhere without warning. Sarah launched her assault teams in small stealth shuttles that penetrated the asteroid's docking bays, while the base's defenders remained completely unaware of the intrusion. Human Marines moved through the facility's corridors like ghosts, using advanced optical camouflage and sound-dampening technology to remain invisible to Corvin guards. The first indication that something was wrong came when the base's main communication array suddenly stopped functioning. Corvin technicians investigating the problem found their equipment had been surgically disabled by devices they did not recognize. Before they could raise an alarm, human Marines emerged from the shadows and neutralized them with weapons that fired projectiles too fast for Corvin reflexes to dodge. Within 30 minutes, Sarah's teams had seized control of every critical system in the base. The facility's automated defenses had been reprogrammed to target Corvin personnel instead of protecting them. The main hangar doors sealed shut, trapping the Raider fleet inside their own base. The command center fell silent as human operatives disabled communication systems and captured key officers. General Thakmore himself was in the base's main briefing room planning another raid against human colonies when Sarah's Marines arrived. The Corvin commander's compound eyes went wide with shock as armed figures in adaptive camouflage materialized around him like creatures from a nightmare. His personal guards, elite warriors who had never been defeated in individual combat, were unconscious on the floor before they could draw their weapons. Sarah removed her helmet and faced the alien general, who had ordered the deaths of so many humans. She spoke in perfect Corvin, having studied their language during months of preparation. She told Thakmore that his attacks on human civilians had consequences and that Earth's patience with Corvin aggression had reached its end. The base's entire garrison of 3,000 warriors found themselves trapped and disarmed by a force they never saw coming. Their individual fighting skills meant nothing against opponents who refused to engage in honorable single combat and instead used coordinated tactics that exploited every weakness in Corvin military thinking. Meanwhile, Commander Alex Turner's squadron was executing precision strikes against Zephyrian communication nodes throughout their home system. The crystalline beings relied heavily on their advanced technology and had never imagined that any primitive species could threaten their supposedly invulnerable installations. Turner commanded a task force of 6 stealth frigates, equipped with experimental electromagnetic pulse weapons designed specifically to disrupt crystal-based technology. The Zephyrians had built their entire civilization around manipulating crystalline structures to store and process information, making them extremely vulnerable to the right kind of electromagnetic interference. The first Zephyrian research station lost all power when Turner's ships fired coordinated EMP bursts that shattered the delicate crystalline matrices essential to their technology. Emergency backup systems failed as cascading resonance effects spread through the station's crystal network like cracks through glass. Chancellor Vextar was attending a meeting of senior Zephyrian scientists when the attacks began. The crystal palace where he held court suddenly went dark as its information processing systems collapsed. The Chancellor's own crystalline body flickered and dimmed as the electromagnetic disruption interfered with his natural bioelectric fields. Turner's forces moved through Zephyrian space like a storm that struck without warning and left only silence behind. Communication relay stations that had operated for millennia crumbled as their crystal cores shattered. Research facilities that contained thousands of years of accumulated knowledge went offline as their data storage matrices collapsed. The Zephyrians discovered that their superior intellect meant nothing when they could not communicate with each other or coordinate their responses. Their rigid military doctrine assumed that any attack would come from known enemies using familiar tactics. They had no procedures for dealing with weapons that exploited fundamental weaknesses in their technology. The most terrifying operations were conducted by Captain Maria Santos and her team aboard the science vessel Darwin. The ethereal collective had always been considered untouchable because their energy-based forms were immune to conventional weapons. Physical projectiles passed harmlessly through them, and energy weapons only made them stronger. Maria was a brilliant physicist who had spent years studying theoretical approaches to combating beings made of pure energy. Her ship carried quantum disruptors that could theoretically interfere with the energy patterns that held ethereal forms together. The technology was experimental and had never been tested against actual ethereals, but Jake's intelligence report suggested it might be humanity's only effective weapon against these ancient beings. The Darwin approached an ethereal meditation ship in deep space, far from any other witnesses. The ship itself was a work of art. a graceful structure of flowing energy that had existed unchanged for over 10,000 years. Its occupants were ancient beings who claimed to have transcended physical existence and achieved perfect spiritual enlightenment. When Maria activated the quantum disruptors, the effect was immediate and shocking. The ethereal ship's elegant energy patterns began to fluctuate and distort as the disruptor field interfered with the quantum frequencies that maintained its structure. For the first time in millennia, the immortal beings inside experienced something they had thought impossible: vulnerability. The ethereals had always spoken condescendingly about biological species and their primitive concerns with physical existence. Now they felt their own energy matrices becoming unstable as human technology attacked them on a level they had never imagined possible. Their perfect peace was shattered by the first fear they had known since ascending to their current forms. Maria's team did not destroy the ethereal ship, but instead demonstrated that humanity now possessed the ability to threaten beings who had considered themselves beyond mortal reach. The quantum disruptors could have torn their energy forms apart completely, but instead they were calibrated to cause discomfort and instability without permanent damage. Throughout the galaxy, the pattern was repeated with mechanical precision. Human forces appeared without warning, neutralized their targets with overwhelming efficiency, and vanished back into dark space before reinforcements could arrive. Alien military installations that had seemed impregnable were seized by forces that moved like shadows and struck with weapons that seemed to violate known physical laws. The most unsettling aspect for alien observers was the perfect coordination displayed by human forces. Every operation began and ended at precisely the same time, despite being conducted across hundreds of light years. The humans demonstrated communication capabilities that allowed instant coordination without any detectable transmissions. Traditional. Alien military doctrine assumed that complex operations required extensive communication networks that could be monitored and disrupted. Human forces operated with a level of independent initiative that alien commanders could not comprehend. Each human unit could adapt its tactics in real time while maintaining overall strategic coordination. The Galactic Council chambers looked very different from the last time Lisa Carter had stood at its central podium. The massive room that had once buzzed with hundreds of alien voices now held a much smaller and considerably more subdued gathering. Many of the seats that had been filled with arrogant delegates were now empty, their former occupants either dead or too afraid to leave their heavily guarded homeworlds. Lisa walked across the chamber floor with the same steady steps she had used months earlier, but everything else had changed completely. She no longer wore the simple blue uniform of a hopeful diplomat seeking acceptance. Instead, she was dressed in the formal black and gold attire of Earth's Galactic Affairs Minister, a new position created specifically to manage humanity's expanded role in interstellar politics. Behind her walked Admiral Susan Blake in her crisp military uniform, decorated with ribbons representing recent victories. Colonel Amy Thompson flanked her other side, her special operations insignia clearly visible to anyone who understood its significance. The message was unmistakable. Humanity now negotiated from a position of unquestionable strength. The alien delegates who remained in their seats looked very different from the confident beings who had once mocked human offers of friendship. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline body flickered weakly as he struggled with the ongoing effects of electromagnetic disruption. His once brilliant crystal form now appeared dull and cracked, a visible reminder of how quickly Zephyrian superiority had crumbled under human assault. General Thakmor spoke from a medical recovery unit, where he had been confined since his flagship was disabled during the human operations. The proud Corvan warrior's carapace was still scorched from energy overloads that had occurred when human hackers turned his own ship's weapons against his crew. His compound eyes no longer reflected the chamber lights with their former arrogant gleam. The ethereal collective's representative appeared as a barely stable cloud of flickering energy that pulsed irregularly with colors that indicated fear and confusion. The ancient being's voice trembled as it spoke, no longer carrying the condescending certainty that had characterized all previous communications. For the first time in thousands of years, these supposedly enlightened energy beings understood what it meant to be mortal and vulnerable. Lisa stepped up to the speaking platform and activated the translation system that would carry her words throughout the chamber. Her opening statement was delivered in a calm, measured tone that somehow made it more terrifying than any angry declaration of victory would have been. She reminded the assembled delegates that humanity had originally sought peace, offering friendship, trade agreements, and cooperative scientific ventures. She described how human diplomats had been mocked, human merchants had been murdered, and human proposals had been dismissed with contempt. The aliens had chosen to interpret human restraint as weakness and human courtesy as evidence of inferiority. Lisa activated the chamber's main display screen and showed the results of Operation Silent Thunder. 73 alien military installations had been neutralized in coordinated strikes that lasted less than 6 hours. 14 raider fleets had been eliminated without a single human casualty. Most importantly, every target had been chosen, specifically because it posed a threat to human civilians or had participated in attacks on human vessels. The tactical display showed something that stunned the alien delegates into complete silence. Critical infrastructure throughout their territories had been left completely untouched. Power stations that supplied energy to billions of civilians remained fully operational. Medical facilities that treated aliens sick and injured had been carefully avoided. Even military bases that posed no threat to humans had been ignored during the operations. Admiral Blake stepped forward and addressed the question that she could see in every alien face. The assembled delegates wanted to understand how such comprehensive military defeat had been possible. Their intelligence services had analyzed human conflicts through intercepted broadcasts and concluded that Earth's species was primitive and underdeveloped. Blake explained that the broadcast aliens had studied were decades out of date and represented humanity during its learning phase rather than its current capabilities. She described how human civilization had used every conflict as an educational opportunity, constantly improving tactics, technology, and strategic thinking. While aliens had perfected individual technologies over millennia, humans had developed systems that evolved and adapted continuously. Dr. Richard Stone was brought forward to address the technological aspects of human advancement. The research director explained that human innovation worked differently from alien development patterns. Instead of specializing in single areas like most species, humans created integrated systems that could modify themselves in real time based on changing conditions. Stone demonstrated several examples of adaptive human technology. He showed how human weapons could analyze alien defenses and reconfigure themselves faster than enemy systems could respond. He explained quantum communication networks that allowed instant coordination across any distance without detectable transmissions. He described stealth technology that operated on principles alien science had never encountered. The most shocking revelation came when Stone explained that all of this represented only the beginning of human technological development. Earth's research facilities were already working on even more advanced systems that would make current capabilities seem primitive by comparison. Human civilization was accelerating its development at exponential rates that alien species could not match or even understand. General Thackmore managed to speak from his medical unit, asking the question that terrified every alien in the chamber. His voice was weak but carried clearly through the room's amplification systems, as he wondered how human military success had been possible when their forces seemed so small compared to established galactic powers. Colonel Thompson answered with a brief lecture on human military philosophy that left the aliens even more disturbed than before. She explained that humans did not fight according to rigid honor codes or traditional formations like most species. Human warfare emphasized speed, deception, and psychological impact rather than simple applications of superior force. Thompson described how human special operations teams had infiltrated supposedly secure alien facilities by exploiting cultural blind spots and assumptions that no primitive species could possess advanced capabilities. She explained how human commanders were trained to think independently and adapt their tactics in real time, making it impossible for enemies to predict or counter human operations. The colonel's most chilling observation was that humans studied their enemies with scientific precision, learning everything about alien psychology, technology, and cultural weaknesses before engaging in any conflict. The recent operations had been planned and executed based on months of intelligence gathering that aliens had never detected because they assumed humans were too primitive to conduct sophisticated espionage. When the military presentations concluded, Lisa returned to the podium to announce the new terms under which humanity would participate in galactic affairs. Earth was no longer requesting membership in the Galactic Council, but rather informing the surviving alien governments about how relationships would be structured going forward. The new accords granted humanity full council membership with voting rights equal to any major power. Human ships would travel freely through any space routes without escorts or restrictions. Trade agreements would be negotiated on terms of complete equality, with Earth offering its advanced technology and resources in exchange for fair compensation. Most importantly, humanity established clear rules about the treatment of human civilians and diplomatic personnel. Any attacks on human vessels would be met with immediate and overwhelming military response. Any species that threatened human colonies would face complete destruction of their military capabilities. Any government that insulted human diplomats would find their leadership removed and replaced with more cooperative individuals. Lisa concluded her presentation by addressing the fundamental change in how aliens should think about humanity. Earth's species had never been primitive warriors, as the intercepted broadcasts had suggested. Humans were experienced survivors who had learned to thrive on a world where everything evolved to kill everything else. They had developed diplomatic skills, technological capabilities, and military expertise through thousands of years of constant challenges. The closing ceremony included the signing of new galactic accords that formally recognized Earth's status as a major power. Alien delegates who had once mocked human diplomats now competed to offer favorable trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Species that had dismissed human friendship now desperately sought human protection from other threats. As the session ended and delegates prepared to leave, Jake Morrison approached Lisa with a final intelligence report. His operatives had been monitoring alien communications throughout the proceedings and reported that several species were already studying human history and culture with newfound respect and considerable fear.